everybody, it's Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome. Welcome back to another episode over here of Stats, Trends, and Picks on That's Comical. And if you are watching and it happens to be a Wednesday, happy new comic book day. Well, I'm hoping you're excited for another video regarding what I thought was some of the best reading that I had this month. And I'm always excited to see if the predictions that I had for the previous month actually panned out. And I think if you recall the last video, I was really up in arms in what I was deciding the top pick was going to be, because as far as I could tell, it looked like April was going to be an extremely amazing month in regards to stuff to read. And it turned out that I was mostly right in regards to my reading, but I will definitely make it clear that the last week of April was probably one of the most mediocre reading weeks that I ever had in regards to new material, because if you also follow us on Twitter, which you should, by the way, it's always great to not only give the top pick, but also give at least 4 recommendations as honorable mentions along with the top choice of the week. And in the last week of April, I only had 2 additional honorable mentions outside of my top pick. But we'll see if that trend continues. I really hope that it doesn't. But in regards to my purchasing numbers, I think this may be a first. I can't remember the last time I actually had the same amount of comics back to back, but I purchased 40 comics in the month of April. And I'm also very happy to see that the top spot went to Image Comics with a total of 14 books. There's a lot of great Image Comics coming out at this point in time. And I was also pretty surprised to see Marvel squeak by DC again for the second time this year. And yeah, I know the other conglomerate is still lagging, but I will say that outside of Image, there are some pretty good independent books coming out, and I'm happy to also state that one of them is in the top picks of the month of April. So if we take a look at the percentages, once again, 35% of my purchasing went to Image, and a quarter went to DC, as opposed to 30 for Marvel, but we're definitely also happy to see that even though the other conglomerate is a small percentage, it went back to a healthy percentage of 10, because if you take a look at where it was in February, as opposed to where it was the month before in January, nice to see it's finally starting to pick up again. The chart also says the same. I mean, it was really crazy to see DC on such a high in 2022, and it started off pretty strong, and then you take a look at what happened in February, where Marvel took that little bump, and then Marvel took that little dive as DC rose again, and now it looks like we're pretty much seeing them cross the streams again, but Marvel is only up so slightly. But it's nice to see that Image is finally taking the reins here. So what happened in April? Well, April, I posted a lot of possibilities, but I think I know what the top pick of this week in April is going to be. So let's take a look at how I fared. So I definitely will say that it was pretty great. I went 3 for 4 in April. Not bad. And the reason why I say that is because even though I couldn't decide what my top pick for some of those weeks were going to be, I still said that regardless, one of these is going to be it, and that's the way it's going to be. So I predicted a single one last month, and I was correct. For the first week of April 2023, I gave it to Matt Kint's Hairball #1 over at Dark Horse Comics. It was exactly what they advertised. It was such a creepy book. I am very excited to see what happens with this little demon cat as the story moves on. I highly recommend it. Matt Kindt is definitely good when it comes to atmosphere and suspense. Hairball #1 was definitely a great read. For the second week of April, I gave it to the penultimate issue of Jeff Lemire's Little Monsters, issue number 12 from Image Comics. Lemire and Wynn, this series is coming to a close in May. Wonder if Little Monsters 13 could possibly take the top spot, but I definitely will say that this may be one of the best reads that I have had over the last year and a half. I definitely am planning to give this series a reread, and I definitely want to have an in-depth discussion about this book with some of my That's Comical colleagues. It's only going to be 13 issues, guys. There's going to be bind-ups. It's really not that much to collect. I really think that Little Monsters is something you should check out. For the third week in April, this was the only one where I did not predict correctly because, as a matter of fact, if you take a look at some of the books that came out that week, I anticipated at least one of these to show up in the top spot. And every single one of the books that you currently see right now on display, yes, they were all fantastic reads. I enjoyed all three of these. But the top spot went to DC Comics' The Flash issue 797 from Jeremy Adams. This was a book that came out of nowhere. I have been having such a great time reading it, especially since the 1 Minute War concluded, but Jeremy Adams now has 4 more issues before his run on The Flash is concluding, and this is just a standalone story about the Flash family with the adventures in babysitting, and it is just flat out fun. There, of course, is a big surprise in this book, and I don't want to give it away, but I had such a great time. I laughed, I smiled, the imagery was hilariously fun to read, and I just cannot recommend this issue enough. Jeremy Adams has been doing such a great job on The Flash, and I am really excited to see what he will do for Green Lantern in May. And for the final week in April, which was the mediocre, I still believed that Mark Millar's The Ambassadors issue number 3 over at Image Comics was going to take the top spot, and I was right. Mark Millar has been killing it with this book. It is so great, and this is the halfway mark. There's only 3 issues left. Very curious to see what might actually happen with this specific universe once the story has concluded, but this was a really great story about a mother and son and the dynamic about them becoming superheroes and how the mother handles a preteen son. I really, really thought it was a good story. Very well thought out, very interesting, and there's a lot that parents can relate to. So yeah, The Ambassadors issue number 3, even though it was a mediocre week in the last week of April of 2023, at least we got a fantastic read in The Ambassadors number 3. So what is going to happen in May of 2023? Well, of course, the first week in May is Free Comic Book Day, so I'm hoping that you all go out to your local comic stores on Saturday, May the 6th, and pick up some really good books along with the free books. Don't forget to give your stores some business, even though you are there to pretty much pick up some free comic books. But there are some very interesting things coming out in May, and I think it's going to be a strong month, especially because it's a 5-week comic book month. So, for the first week of May, even though there are a lot of great issues coming out, as well as 3 stories that are concluding, miniseries, we see the conclusion of Paul Levitz's Avengers War Across Time over at Marvel with issue number 5, the 7th issue of Mark Silvestri's Batman and the Joker, The Deadly Duo, and Peter David's 5th and final issue of Joe Fixit. All 3 of these books have been a blast. The Deadly Duo has been the best book of 2023, at least for me. But even though I believe that Batman and the Joker, The Deadly Duo, issue number 7, is going to come out on top, it's going to be a different DC book that I, for some reason, have high hopes for. And I am giving that top spot to Mark Waid's newest DC edition, Shazam number 1. Also, with artistry from Dan Mora, this is the team that is giving us the best ongoing DC series right now, which is Batman, Superman, World's Finest. When I found out that Mark Waid was going to be writing Shazam, I got very excited. I loved how he wrote Shazam in Kingdom Come, a very different kind of Shazam, but Shazam is a book I haven't really picked up before, so I am very excited to actually read a Shazam run just with a great team behind it. I really hope that it's good. For the second week of May, there are some really exciting things. We have continuations like Jeff Lemire's Fandom Road number 3 at Image, the conclusion of Little Monsters from Image by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen, and we even have Jeremy Adams starting off a brand new Green Lantern run over at DC Comics. So, these all seem like a lot of fun, but none of them matter. There's only one book that's coming out in the second week of May of 2023 that I have a feeling is going to take the top spot, and it's a book that I've been waiting far too long for. It is over at Marvel Comics. It is the 5th issue of Neil Gaiman and Mark Buckingham's Miracle Man: The Silver Age. I have been dying for this story to continue because I've been obsessed with Miracle Man ever since I picked up The Silver Age and worked my way back all the way to the beginning of Alan Moore's run. I am anticipating this to be the top pick of the week. Guys, if you haven't started reading Miracle Man, do it, and do it now. For the 3rd week in May, I am going to give it back to Mark Waid and Dan Mora to Batman and Superman World's Finest, issue number 15. The 3rd story arc has just once again been flat out fun. Very excited to see this continuing story and seeing, of course, how it's going to conclude in the coming months. Again, I cannot praise this book enough. It has just been so much fun, action-packed. Even the little breaks in the story arcs have just been flat-out fun. This book should get some kind of an award in the coming months, or whenever awards for comics are even given. Check out World's Finest, guys. You won't regret it. For the 4th week in May of 2023, I am giving it back to Mark Millar and The Ambassadors issue number 5. Even though issue number 4 is coming out before this, there's 2 issues coming out each month. There's just other books that I think are going to pass it, but issue number 5, I'm looking forward to seeing how the story continues. And for the final week in May, which is because of the fact that it's a 5-week comic book month, I am giving it to Marvel Comics Venom Lethal Protector issue number 3. Not that many books are coming out that I'm going to be collecting in that week, and usually when it comes to a 5-week comic book month, usually the last week of the month doesn't really have too much. But I've been loving Venom Lethal Protector. I love the first issue from David Michelinie, and the fact that he's writing a follow-up is great. I love what he's doing in this story, and also seeing characters that you haven't seen in comic books for such a long time, like Cardiac. Like, when was the last time we all saw Cardiac? Like, maybe since the late 90s? But I've just been having fun with this one, especially considering the fact that Al Ewing's Venom run right now is really not rubbing people the right way at this point. So that wraps up another episode of Stats, Trends, and Picks regarding my picks for April of 2023 and my predictions for May of 2023. I hope you all have a fun free comic book day. Support your local comic book stores, guys. Don't just go to pick up the free comics. And hopefully we will have a very strong reading month in May of 2023. But in the meantime, everybody, we'll see you in the next one.